Hello, thank you for joining me for yoga this afternoon. I'm Caroline, also known as the Yoga Crow. This is teen yoga and it's Thursday. So we're nearly at the end of the week. If you have been working at laptops and computers, getting some schoolwork done today, great. We're going to release some tension from the wrists, from the shoulders, the neck. And if you haven't, it's great. We're going to have a lovely big stretch of the body. To begin with, I wanted to mention Mental Health Awareness Week. So that is this week. And the hashtag behind it this year is Kindness Matters. So thinking about that, there's a wonderful word. It's a Sanskrit word. It's ahimsa. And that's ahimsa. And that means compassion. And I often translate it as kindness towards ourselves as well as others, but we have to begin with being kind to ourselves first. And what does that look like? So maybe that does look like yoga for you today, and that's obviously looking after yourself, whether that's including your mental health, but also your physical health as well. Yoga does a bit of both, which is wonderful. But also being kind to yourself in your thoughts and words. So sometimes we give ourselves quite a hard time. We maybe use the words good, bad, which are very positive and very negative. They're quite extreme words. So maybe thinking about softer words that you can use about yourself, and thinking about all the fantastic things you do, the things you're good at, you've been improving at after over the last few weeks, and trying to think a little bit more positively, because that can really affect our mindset. And I realize that's not always easy, that's not always possible, but bringing movement into your day really helps. It's been proven that movement of some sort, whether that's cycling, running, or yoga, can really lift your mental health and well-being. So with that in mind, we're going to start with some breath work. And I use a lot of breath work in my classes with teenagers, in schools, in my private classes, here in the studio, and we concentrate quite a lot on the breath. And that's because the breath is the key sometimes to our mental health. Well, always actually, not sometimes. There's a really easy way to calm ourselves down, to balance ourselves, to ground ourselves. So maybe we're feeling worried or anxious or stressed, or we're feeling fed up and frustrated, and quite angry. Maybe we just can't get to sleep in the evenings. Our minds are racing and we're still thinking about lots of things. So the breath is a really useful tool to have, to be able to use. So we're going to be doing our straw breathing today. And I learned this from a wonderful teacher called Donna Fari, who lives in New Zealand. So we're going to start standing today, and we're going to have our feet about hip distance apart. So have a look at your feet. Your toes are pointing forwards and you want your feet to be parallel. Okay, so hip distance, we're looking for the big toes to be almost underneath our hip bones, which are these frontal bones here. They're called the iliac crests, if you want the scientific or the anatomy name for them. And that's what we're looking for. Our big toes roughly under there. And that feels nice and stable with a little bit of a gap between our feet. So check in with the toes, lift the toes up, spread the toes all the way down, and have a little bend in the knees. So try not to lock the knees out. It's quite harsh, it's quite tight for the knees. Just a little bit of softness there, a little bit of softness in the face, in the jaw, and we'll roll our shoulders up, back, and down, and bring our hands down to the sides of our bodies. And this is where, if you would like to, you can close down your eyes. And I always ask or invite you to do that, because that doesn't work for everybody. However, what it can do is it can really help you focus inwards. So when I'm breathing, if my eyes are open, I feel like I can be distracted. There's trees outside. I can see through the window, and just the movement can distract me a little bit. So with the eyes closed, I'm less likely to be distracted by my surroundings. So we're standing tall, feeling that length in the spine and in the body, and tucking the chin maybe a centimetre. That'll lengthen the back of our neck, and then we can close down the eyes. And if at any point you don't feel comfortable with the eyes closed, I reopen them. Allow them to softly open. So bring your attention to your feet to begin with. Now this is a version of Tadasana, mountain pose. And so many different variations of mountain pose, and this is just one. And what we're looking for here is an even weight distribution over both feet. So your body weight is even. So just notice if you're standing on one foot more than the other. Are you able to even that out a little bit? And if we have an injury, this is a pose we can do just sitting down in a chair. So if we've got a sore knee or a sore leg, we can sit in a chair and still sit tall and do a seated version of mountain pose. So maybe you've corrected that balance a little. And this is to bring balance to the body as well as the mind. Noticing how it feels to have the soles of the feet grounding through the floor. That sense of stability, just like a mountain. So this is mountain pose, and we're imagining we're unmovable. We're still. Mountains don't really move. We're tall and strong. Feeling that strength in this pose. And then we're going to bring our attention to our breath. So in yoga, we try and breathe in and out through the nose. And I know this is a season for hay fever, and you might even just have a blocked up nose. So working with what you can with your body. And begin to notice where your breath is going. So as you breathe in, where is the breath moving to? Where can you feel it? There's no right or wrong answer to this. Just noticing which parts of the body are expanding as we breathe in. And if you're feeling it mainly in the upper chest and the lungs, can you encourage it into the belly? So as you breathe in, ballooning the belly just a little. So we're breathing into the belly, into the lungs, and into the upper chest. And this is called a complete breath, a yogic breath. So really allowing your belly, giving it permission to expand with the breath. Can you feel the back of your rib cage moving a little as well? So over half of our breath goes into the back of the body, into the back of the lungs. So maybe you can feel that movement in the back of the body. And you may even feel a little bit of movement in the lower back with the breath as well. So maybe you notice that the breath is getting a little bit slower, a little bit quieter, longer. And this is where we're going to try our straw breathing. So if the eyes are closed, keeping them closed. And we're going to be breathing in through the nose and out through our mouth. And we're imagining we're blowing our breath out through a straw. So we can use the imagination. I often teach it using an actual straw, but we can use our imagination and just imagine we're blowing through a straw. So breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. So if at any point this doesn't feel right, you can come back just to your regular breath. But what we're doing is we're breathing out for a little bit longer than we're breathing in. So that's called extending the exhalation. And it's a really simple way to calm our nervous system down. Breathing in through the nose and out through our imaginary straw. Making sure you're still standing tall, the shoulders are soft. And we're going to do one more breath like this. And gently opening the eyes and taking a moment to notice how you feel. How do you feel after a little bit of breathing work? And also, how do your feet feel? They might now feel glued to the floor. So let's lift them up and give them a little wiggle. If you've got good balance today, I don't always have good balance. I'm already wobbling. You can hold on to something close by, a table, a chair, maybe even the wall, as we bring some circles to our ankles. It's okay if they click. Mine are clicking today. And then we point and flex. And then we'll go over to the other side. So in yoga, we try and do everything on both sides. Depends on the pose. And we're trying to bring balance to the body. So nobody's skeleton or body is symmetrical. We've all got different bodies. So no body has the same body as somebody else. We're going to bring our hips left and right. So just gently bringing the hips into left and right. Maybe you can imagine a favorite song. It's quite a good one to dance to. You can have a softness in the knees, so maybe bending the knees. And then we're going to make a figure of 8 with our hips. So if we've been sitting quite a lot, our hips can get tight. And this is some lovely movement here. Just to loosen off the muscles around the hips. And you can maybe even bring the arms into it as well. So swinging the arms and making that figure of 8. So a little bit of movement. And coming back to stillness. So I've got the feet a little bit wider here. It's just personal preference. You can have the feet together. So whatever feels good for you. I'm going to take one wrist and I'm going to reach over to my left hand side. So I'm tugging hold of that top wrist just to extend it a little bit further if I can. And still checking in with the feet. We want the feet still to be even. Toes are still pointing forwards. And then we can come back up to center and we're going to take hold of the other wrist. So holding onto the left wrist and going over to the right hand side and giving that wrist a little bit of a tug. And coming up and bringing your hands down to the sides of the body. We're going to move our wrists now, and I'm going to have my wrists together. You can do it this way or just make some circles. So I'm rolling my hands around. So hopefully you can see that. The back of the hands come together and then the palms. So it's almost like they're glued together at the wrists. And we're making that lotus flower shape. And then we're going to reverse the movement. So now it's almost like I'm giving you something. So our wrists and our hands do lots of work for us, especially if we're working on computers and devices. Really good to be able to look after them. And bring hands down to the sides of the body again. We're going to do a twist before we come back to the hands. So breathing in, breathing out, and turning to look over your right shoulder. So again, the feet are still static. They're still pointing forwards. They're parallel, so it's like they're on train tracks. And we're looking over our right shoulder. And in yoga, we just go as far as we feel comfortable going. So some days, you'll go a little bit further than others. Slowly coming back around to center and looking over the left shoulder. So twists are great for massaging our spines. So that means bringing a little bit of space between each vertebrae. And slowly coming back to center again. We're going to do something I call the motorbike pose. So we're going to make fists. Our knuckles are facing forwards and we're imagining we're revving a motorbike. It's the easiest way to explain it. And this is bringing a little bit of a stretch to the wrist. So you might find you don't feel it very much. You might find you feel it quite a lot. So just being mindful. It's a really good stretch to do if you've been using a mobile phone quite a lot. And then stretching the fingers out. And we'll give the fingers a gentle tug. So a little tug to stretch them out. It's almost like you're stroking them. Really good to look after our hands. Fantastic. Let's roll the shoulders up, back and down. And we're going to bring our hands behind us. And I'm just moving so you can see me. I'm going to clasp my hands together. And I'm going to take the hands towards the floor. And maybe I take them out away from the body just a little bit as well. Okay, so we're opening up this shoulder area. And this is going to bring a little bit more space to our chest for our breath. And then we're going to let go. We're going to come into tree pose now. So we stretch the body out a little. We're going to plant our right foot down first. So tree pose is a lovely grounding pose. We're going to imagine we are a tree. And maybe you can think of a tree that you know of. Just to have it in your mind can sometimes help us balance really well. Or maybe you can see a tree today out the window where you are. So planting that right foot down and really think about the surface area of the foot. We want to spread the toes as much as we can. And then we've got a lovely surface area over that foot. We're going to bring the left foot in. And the heel of the left foot is resting on the right ankle. And you'll see the toes are down. So we're starting here because this is a lovely shape for tree. We're coming to this shape because that's the shape we're trying to make. But to begin with, we can just find our balance and find our bearing. Bring the hands to the hips. And then we're going to find something to stare at. So in yoga, we call it a drishti point. Something to help bring stillness to the mind and the body. So once you've found something ahead of you that's not moving, you can use that as your drishti. And then, and only then, if you're feeling stable, you can raise your left foot and pop it on the calf. Now, if you're wobbly, I'm going to ask you or invite you to hold on to something. We all have wobbly days. Some days I do this by the wall. So holding onto a wall, having a fingertip by the wall or the back towards the wall, holding onto a chair, just making sure you're safe where you are. So if you do wobble and fall over, you're not going to hurt yourself. And remembering the foot that comes up, the one place it doesn't go is the knee. So the knee's a really special joint. We want to look after our knees. So we're keeping it in between the ankle and the knee. Bringing the hands together at heart center. Sometimes pushing the hands in towards each other. That can help with the balance. And then if you want a little bit more, you can raise the hands up together above the head or take the arms apart. So remember, we're still imagining our tree. We're grounded, we're rooted through our standing leg. I'm a little bit wobbly today. It's a bit windy, my tree. And then slowly bring the hands back down to heart center and coming back down. And we're going to change sides. So we will spread our left foot and the toes out. And bring the left heel to the right heel to the left ankle. So we're starting with that shape again. And bringing the hands again to hips. Thinking about these frontal hip bones we were talking about earlier. They're pointing forwards. If you're feeling okay on this side, feeling stable, raising that right leg. Finding the balance. So making sure it's not on the knee. And one side may well be easier. You'll be stronger on one side than the other. Bringing the hands together at heart center. And maybe you stay here today. This is your perfect tree today. As I say, every day is different. Or maybe you take the hands up together or slightly apart. And one of the reasons I keep my hands slightly apart is I've got quite tight shoulders often. So that's just a little bit kinder to my shoulders. So coming back to that idea of ahimsa. Kindness towards ourselves, compassion. Kindness matters. So remembering to be kind towards yourself as you practice yoga. So there's a little bit of honesty needed with ourselves, and sometimes that's translated as satya in yoga, honesty. So thinking about what our body needs on that day, in that moment. Bringing the hands together to heart center and dropping down that foot, and give the knees a little wiggle here. We're going to come down to the floor today and we'll do some more movement on the floor. And actually, to begin with, we're going to come to kneeling. So we're going to come to kneeling and sitting tall. If this isn't very comfortable and the knees and the ankles aren't very happy, you can get a cushion or a pillow or a rolled up towel and you can pop it in here between the back of the thighs and the calf muscles, and that'll take a little bit of pressure off the knees and the ankles. So we're going to come into a little balance on the ankles, and this is one I do quite a lot in my teen classes. This is great for stretching out the feet, and it's going to stretch the top of the foot. We're going to be literally balancing on the top of the foot just there. So there's lots of different options. Work with your body. Some of you will find this really easy. Some of you will find this quite tough. It can be quite hard. And just remember, you have to work towards things often in yoga. So to begin with, we're going to have our hands either side of the knees, and we're going to lift our knees up just a little bit. So maybe that's enough for you, and you can come up and down quite slowly. If you want to come a little bit further, bring the hands to the center of the calves and come up a little bit further. Maybe you can feel that stretch in the ankles, and then you can come down. If you're able to come a little bit further, you might be very flexible, so be really careful if you are. We're going to come up just that a little bit higher, and maybe you can then create that balance and bring your hands onto your thighs. So just work with where you are today. And it's one of these, it's one of my made up poses. So every time you practice it, you just get a little bit further, a little bit stronger. So we need the flexibility in our feet and our ankles, so we avoid injury, but we also need strength as well. So it's a mixture of both. And slowly coming back down. And now we're going to tuck our toes. So tuck our toes under. I have to physically do that. My toes won't do it themselves. So I'm tucking my toes under, and maybe we're here. So we're looking for a toe stretch here. So my hands are just by my knees again. Maybe I've come up a little bit higher, or maybe I can sit my glutes onto my heels and my toes can really stretch out. So it really just depends on how much of a toe stretch you get each day. This could be agony. And if it is, if your breath suddenly feels quite labored and it's hard to breathe, then take a deep breath and come out of it. So in yoga, we want our breath to be long and smooth and slow, nice and even. So we know if our breath changes dramatically, we've maybe gone a bit too far. And slowly unhook those toes and take a moment to feel that release. That feels really, really nice. We're going to come into something called Camel Pose now. We're not going to do full camel because that's quite strong and it can be quite strong on the neck. So I like to teach it just a slightly gentler way. And Camel Pose opens up our chest. And so it's wonderful for releasing any frustration often. But it's great to keep the breath moving because it brings some more space to the lungs as well. So we have to tuck our toes under, but we'll be sitting up on our knees here. And finding that length, we still want that lovely length through the body. So just like we were when we were standing, we're going to take our hands, and our palms of our hands are going to be on our backs. And the toes, so the fingers are pointing down towards the feet. Elbows are coming together. We're going to breathe in. And as we breathe out, we're gently taking our head back. So the head's not going all the way back. We're just looking towards the sky. Our hands are pushing our hips and our pelvis forwards. And we want to keep that gaze towards the ceiling, towards the sky. Elbows still coming towards each other. Remembering to breathe. And then slowly coming back out. And whenever we do a back bend in one direction, we bend the spine in the opposite direction to bring some balance to the body. So we'll come into extended child's pose. So the big toes are together, the knees are wide apart. Your glutes are on your heels, and we're coming down. Palms spread, middle fingers pointing forwards, and the hands are about shoulder width apart, and we're looking towards the floor. And maybe this is enough for you here. Or maybe you'd like to come down a little bit further. So you can drop the elbows and bring the chest and the head towards the floor, but only if that's possible and that feels comfortable and right for your body. If you are able to bring the forehead all the way to the floor, still keep a softness in the elbows. And then we can bring the hands back towards the body. We're going to stretch out the back of the legs now. And we're going to come into something that is like a box position. So you may well be familiar with this, but really think about the hands spreading, the middle fingers pointing forwards. So we want the hands spread, shoulder width apart, and the knees about hip distance apart under our hips. If the wrists feel sore, you can come down to your elbows. So coming into this position. And then we're going to start moving our spine in an S shape. So I call this Catfish Pose. It's another sort of made up pose of mine. So we're trying to move the spine from left to right. Bring some movement into the hips as well, especially if you've been sitting a lot today. And then we'll come back to center. We'll come into cat-cow and then we'll stretch the calf muscles off. So cat-cow looks like this. We breathe in, we look forwards, we tip the belly towards the floor, we breathe out, we look towards our belly and lift our spine towards the ceiling. So don't worry too much if you forget which way you're supposed to be breathing. Just make sure you are breathing. Breathing in to look forwards, taking the belly towards the floor, and breathing out to arch the spine up. So it looks like a sort of angry or happy cat. All the way through. And this is another one that's massaging the back and the spine, creating a little bit of space at the top of the shoulders as well. And then slowly coming back to our central neutral position. We're going to take our right toes back and reach through the heel. So it's safe to straighten the leg here, really straighten it and reaching through the heel so you get a stretch through the calf muscle. And then we'll go over to the other side. So this time it's the left foot, toes are down, reaching through the heel. And slowly coming back up. We'll come to sitting for a moment, rotate the wrists, give the wrists a break. So we've worked through the upper chest and the shoulders. We've twisted the back and the spine. We've brought a little bit of length to our legs as well and work with our feet and our ankles. So we're going to finish off with lying down. And our feet and our toes are pointing forward, so the feet are parallel, and we're going to lie all the way down. And we're going to bring our knees in and give them a hug. So gently bring the knees in and letting go. So just stretching the lower back. And slowly bringing the feet back down to the floor. Bring the hands onto the belly, and if you feel comfortable doing so, closing down the eyes. And we'll come back to connecting with our breath. So we're not going to do any breath work at this point in the class. We're just going to follow our breath. So we're using it as an anchor. So this is to help our minds become quiet and still. So the biggest challenge in yoga is stilling our minds. Our minds are always busy. They're thinking about things. We have lots of thoughts, and that's fine. That's normal. But what we're trying to do is just take it a little bit slower, allow our minds to really think about the breath, and we can use it as an anchor. So with the hands on the belly, you'll notice the belly rising and falling. Still directing the breath into the belly, into the lungs, into the upper chest. I'm taking 3 more breaths like this and sighing the breath out this time. So breathing in and sighing the breath out. Taking a moment. And then when we come up to sitting, we find the kindest way to do that for our bodies. So that's likely to mean rolling over to one side and using the hands to push yourself up to a seated position. So it means we're not jerking our necks or our backs. We're using our hands to help us get back up. I'm going to finish cross-legged, or maybe kneeling feels more comfortable, or sitting in a chair, but finishing sitting, seated in a position where you can have the spine long. Shoulders soft. And then we'll bring the hands together to heart center. So this is called Anjali Mudra, joining both halves of the body together. And taking a moment to say thank you to yourself for practicing some yoga. Noticing how it's made you feel. Has anything changed? Has anything in your mind changed? Has anything in your breath changed? Has anything changed in your body? And then I'll take my hands up to my forehead to remind us all to have kind thoughts, to my lips to remind us all to have kind words, and back down to my heart center to remind us all to have kind actions. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me today for some yoga. I hope that feels good. I hope you feel better for doing a little bit of movement and a little bit of breathing. If you did like it, please do give me a thumbs up, tick that little thumb at the bottom of the video. And if you'd like to know more about classes, you can find all my details on my website, theyogacrow.com. Looking forward, hopefully, to see you again soon. Otherwise, it's bye from me.